disciples, and churches. If we're going to see movements of the gospel, then the backbone on which those movements are going to move is people who have everyday normal jobs. And that means that they're busy. So whatever methods we give them to multiply disciples and churches, they're going to have to be very efficient in the amount of time that they cost and very effective in what they do while we are spending time laboring. And so we call this the 6-hour guideline. A 6-hour guideline starts with 2 hours of church where you're getting trained every week. Your church is meeting and you're being trained by someone else. And what we're going to do in that first couple meetings is train you to share your testimony in the gospel. And we want you to go out and share with everybody you know in your relational network or your oikos. And you may find people that are ready to say yes to the gospel and be baptized and begin training, but some people don't. In that case, we want you to spend 2 additional hours doing evangelism with people that you don't know, generating new relationships around the gospel. And you can do that doing a house of peace search, as outlined by Jesus in Matthew 10 and Luke 9 and 10. Or you can just go to public areas where a lot of people congregate, like malls and food courts and markets. Eventually, if you keep that up faithfully enough, you'll find somebody that wants to trust Christ and is willing to be trained in a house church. And in that case, we want you to stop taking that 2 extra hours of evangelism and begin training the person of peace that you find, or that person that comes into the kingdom, to share the gospel and grow in Christ. And as you begin to train them, you're going to repeat this same process so that they go out and they start a church where they're training others. Now you can see that this initial amount of training is going to cost you about 4 hours, but that third generation church in our picture here, that church doesn't cost you any more time. Now you are multiplying your life, and other people are sharing the gospel, and you're doubling the amount of work that you can do to advance the kingdom without costing you any more time. That's really effective. Now, as you begin to grow in your relationship with Christ and you need more training, you're probably going to find that you're going to need some mentorship or some leader development outside of the normal church meeting. And that's where we're going to ask you to spend 1 hour in an accountability team or a team with a person that's training you. And at the same time, if you want to see a sustained movement of the gospel, you're going to have to do leader development yourself. And we're going to encourage you to find the best person in your church that you're training that's most hungry to see Jesus' kingdom grow and advance, and spend an hour in an A team with them. Now that's a really good look at how you can get 3 generations of churches on 6 hours a week. But what's really encouraging is you're not the only person that's being trained in that first generation church. Hopefully that's happening in the lives of the other people in your church as well. And you're seeing church networks emerge that look like this. So to review, we're going to ask you for 6 hours. And we are seeing people on 6 hours a week multiply churches and disciples. The 6 hours are 2 hours where you're getting trained, 2 hours where you're training others, an hour where you're receiving mentorship in an A team, and an hour where you're mentoring others. And you'll note that this 6 hours is something you grow into. It starts with just 2 hours initially where you're being trained in a church. A few common pitfalls that will keep people from seeing generations using the 6-hour guideline. The first one is they're in a church where they think they're being trained, but it's not really happening. They're maybe getting a lot of theological instruction, they're doing a lot of singing, they're giving, and they're developing really good relationships with other believers, but they're actually not getting equipped to do the work of the ministry and preach the gospel. Secondly, they may be getting equipped in that church, but they're not willing to share with their entire oikos. And so what that means is that the possibilities of people that might come into the kingdom are very limited by your own boldness. Some people are willing to share with everybody they know. They're comfortable with that because it's more relational, but they don't find anybody that really wants to advance the kingdom. That's that fourth soil kind of person from Mark 4, the parable of the soils. And so they're not willing to go share outside of their oikos and take that extra 2 hours to do evangelism, knocking on doors and meeting people and generating new relationships around the gospel. Another mistake is people love doing evangelism so much that once they find somebody that wants training, they just ignore them and they won't stay in that house, as Jesus instructs the apostles in Matthew 10:11, to keep training the new believer so that they will multiply. They enjoy the evangelistic process so much that they just lead people to Christ and leave them. You're never going to get to a movement that way. You might lead a lot of people to Christ yourself personally, but you're not going to see masses come to Christ. The next one is that you may start a church and begin training, but you'll drift back into what I call churchianity. Instead of intentionally equipping the people that you find that want training, you just spend a lot of time discussing the Bible, maybe singing songs, and again, developing good relationships, but there's no actual equipping where people are held accountable, they're being taught to obey, and that they're setting goals for themselves, and a vision is being cast that is bigger than just their little church. Another mistake is people adopt the idea once they begin laboring is that they're good and they don't need any more training. They'll stop coming back to the church where they're being trained and they won't meet with their mentor in an A-team. And so the necessary depth in their lives that you need to see sustained movements never takes place. And then finally, they may not invest deeply in a few leaders the way we see Jesus do with the apostles in an A-team where they're developing other leaders that will sustain the growth of their own network. I hope this helps you. If you're a busy person trying to see a movement of the gospel happen, don't quit your job. Hang in there. Comb through your life. See if there are places where you're not spending your time effectively or efficiently, and see if you can reorganize your life in such a way that will best facilitate kingdom growth. Thanks.